Well, hi everybody. It's Joe Chaffee and Joe Rayo on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday, August the 3rd, 2020. So it's finally here. It's tomorrow's the day where Isaias, Isaias, or however we pronounce it, it will finally move up. And once it's long gone, we will celebrate its departure so we won't have to use the name anymore and figure out how to pronounce it. So let's right off the top state what this is and what this isn't. Okay. And I think this is really important because, as you and I both know, um, and we're not speaking of anybody that watches this show on a regular basis, because those who are on watch this show on a regular basis or on the chat board have a good understanding about weather and how it works, and they pay attention. Whereas most people just read a if they read a line at all or they look at a picture and they only hear what they want to hear. So with that in mind, Joseph, you start off. What isn't this storm?
Um, well, I have a rant right off the top of the show, and the rant is that tonight on the CBS Evening News,
With Walter Cronkite? No, not Walter Cronkite.
we all wish it was Walter Cronkite. And I said to my wife afterwards, after this statement that I heard, I said Walter Cronkite is probably like spinning in his grave right now. But Nora O'Donnell was talking about the impending storm, and then she came up with this. She said, and in New York City, the speed of the storm winds are expected to be the worst since Hurricane Sandy 8 years ago. And as soon as she said that, I turned to my wife and I said,
It's
"That's
over.
it.
It's
That's it.
over.
Now everybody who watched that newscast tonight is on the phone or telling friends, I just heard on the news this is going to be the worst storm since Sandy. Yeah, really. Uh,
Okay, so
and let me.
let's make it. I
I'm trying
know
to get the eyeballs to
your
roll
hair
back
shakes.
forward
Your hair
again.
shakes when you do that. It's very cool.
Yeah,
Uh, so uh, this is not like Sandy, and we understand the reflexive nature to go back to something that caused a considerable damage and had impact on many people's lives, and we totally get that because Joe and I were part of that group of people that were impacted by the storm, uh, particularly me here on Long Island. I totally get it, but it isn't like Sandy. It isn't the same track. It isn't the same upper air. It isn't the same type of storm. It's nothing like it. Every storm has its own character, its own outcome. Some of them are similar. You can make comparisons to some storms versus others, but that's a tough thing to do. And I get like I said, I get the reflexive nature to go back to that. And if you're on the South Shore of Long Island, you're in particular, you are in particular fear because of the threat for some coastal flooding. But it's not like Sandy.
it's interesting. Also, I don't know what model he was using to show this, but on CBS 2, Lonnie Quinn was showing a map and of wind speed,
Right.
potential wind gusts, and they were generally anywhere in the 40 to 50, the occasional 60. But right smack in the middle of the graphic is New York City, and it said 87. And I
You
did like
know,
a
one of the problems with those graphics, the ones that are automated and they're automatically generated and they're tied to whatever weather model is, that when you put them on the air, you wind up being married to whatever it says, even though you might not agree with it. And oftentimes, you and I have both done this. You make the case, you make the statements that this is what the model is saying this, but we don't think the numbers are going to be that high. It's very tough when you're showing all these different models because they all come up with all sorts of different, all sorts of scenarios, and you have to you and I basically have to go through all of that stuff and come up with something that makes sense.
correct, correct. And I'm sure this happened to you more than a few times. Sometimes you show the future cast, which is constantly being updated like every 3 hours. So I put my show together. I used to put my shows together, had the future cast showing one thing. I said, okay, that's what it's showing, and that's what I'll emphasize. But in the interim,
It'll change.
An update comes along and changes either the numbers or the configuration of where the rain and the snow is, so that when I'm standing there and I click the futurecast, I do like a, oh well, this
No.
is not what I wanted to tell you because it's changed. You know,
All right. So let's start with what's going on right now, because uh, uh, the um, the storm appears to be getting a little better organized. It may go on. It may wind up technically being a minimal hurricane when it makes landfall, if it gets back to 75 miles an hour. But that really doesn't matter, because there's really not that much of a difference between a strong tropical storm and a minimal hurricane. You're talking
correct,
about a handful of miles an hour. So it's
correct.
just really a technical designation and nothing else.
It's like in the same manner, if I may use an analogy here. Back in 2003, Mars made its closest approach to the Earth in 60,000 years, but it was a matter of only maybe a few 100,000 miles between the closest approach up till now to what was going to happen in 2003. And Neil deGrasse Tyson had a great analogy. He said this is like the equivalent of going to Jones Beach, and you go out 50 feet from the shoreline, and I go out 70 feet from the shoreline, and then I turn around and I wave to you and I say, I'm closer than you ever have been to England,
Right.
by being out just a few feet further away. And the same thing goes with the hurricane. Joe, even if it doesn't reach minimal hurricane force, is it really going to be a big difference? A matter of 5 miles
No.
between a tropical storm slash a minimal hurricane? No, it's not. And it doesn't even make any difference to us, because when it gets up here, it's not going to be anywhere near hurricane force or hurricane strength. It'll be a tropical storm. And the problem here for us is going to be the gusts, not sustained 70-mile-per-hour winds,
But the
but the
gusts.
occasional gust of 40 or 50 or 60 for you folks who live on the right or eastern side of the storm track.
One of the things I'm going to be a little concerned about tomorrow with respect to the wind gusts is the fact that there seems to be a little bit of we've talked about how sometimes storms, when they get up into the mid latitudes, they start reacting to the upper air. The upper air deep trough that's to the west is probably going to give it a little bit of energy, at least enough that it will probably maintain its identity fairly well as it moves on through. And there's a few things going on in the upper air that suggest that there might be some, at least along the coast, that there might be some interesting wind gusts up above 60 miles an hour. But I've always been, it's so hard to pick up a top number. I don't know. There could always be a renegade. I've been out here, we've had renegade gusts to 70 or 80 miles an hour and all sorts of different kinds of events. Could that happen? Sure. But I think it suffice the understanding is if you're forecasting gusts of 50 to 60, you know that probably means that there's the potential for power lines to go down, there's a potential for power outages, there's potentials for trees to uproot. And the other thing, Joe, I want to say is we're watching the loop here of Isaias, that the emphasis all along has been, look, there have been a couple of things. It's a small cyclone, and it still is a rather tight, small cyclone. It's expanding a little bit, but it's still on the smallish side. There hasn't been very much on the west side. That was totally anticipated up along the Florida coast and on up into Georgia. And now that it's moved up into South Carolina, particularly into North Carolina, northeastern South Carolina, and particularly into North Carolina, we're starting to see the rain area shift to the west side. And that's a process that's going to continue through tonight and into tomorrow. So the character is going to be a little bit different. And as far as the final track is concerned, and folks, if you're listening, pay attention here, it's very important. However the storm tracks up when it moves up the coast, if you draw a line along that track, it is quite likely those areas that are going to be to the west of that line are the ones that are going to get the heavy rains of 4, 5, or maybe even 6 inches. But the rain is going to the east of that line is going to sharply cut off. And as you go east of New York City, across Long Island, across southern New England and Connecticut, you probably won't get very much rain out of this. It's going to be more wind than anything else, and whatever bands that come through. So just bear that in mind. There's no flash flood watch up for Long Island. There are no flash flood watches up for from Connecticut, from southern and eastern Connecticut eastward. It's up for northwest Connecticut, but there are no flash flood watches up for those areas, and there's a reason, and that's because of where the track is. That the heavy rains that might cause flash flooding are going to be basically west of New York City. And again, I'll show where the track is, and we'll figure out where the heavy rain. But we are seeing Joe on tonight's loop, and that jumping you see is because it's a floater image. So the image tries to keep the storm in the center. So as it moves, the geography is what shifts. So it might give you an idea that it's moving in an odd direction, but it really isn't. It's moving north-northeast. We've seen it get a little more circular this afternoon and this evening. The southwest shear seems to have abated because we had this really elongated northeast-southwest look to it. Kind of an oblong look, but now it's gotten a little more circular. But of course, it's going to be moving on land soon, so it really is running out of time. It goes in as a strong tropical storm or minimal hurricane, and that's it. And here's the perspective, by the way. We're seeing, we had a gorgeous day here today. A deep blue sky, deep blue tropical sky. This is usually the setup day before a tropical system is usually a really nice day. It was great. And now we're seeing clouds coming up from the south. And you can also see the clouds that are back, Joe. You look up in the Great Lakes, and that's that deep upper trough that is driving all this and is going to swing around and just pivot this up the East Coast.
Yeah, and the thing, Joe, getting back to the speed of the winds, one thing that I think is really going to come into play tomorrow is the forward speed. Right now, the storm from the last advisory from the Hurricane Center, it's made the turn. Now it's going to the north and northeast, 16 miles per hour. I think that during the afternoon tomorrow, that thing is going to be rolling along at 30, maybe even 40 miles per hour. It really is going to be moving at a very fast clip. And you add that forward speed to a storm with, let's say, 50-mile-per-hour winds near the center, that forward speed is going to only serve to help to enhance or accentuate, especially again on the east side of the storm, the wind gusts, and that's what I think we'll be looking at tomorrow. And the other thing is that the fact is that the storm is as it moves over land. Well, again, as it moves over land, frictional drag will wring out all that moisture. But again, with the forward speed, it won't have time to really completely run down, so to speak, which is another reason why one has to be concerned about the winds during the day tomorrow here in the tri-state area.
6 hours of rough stuff. That's how I'm looking at it.
Absolutely.
6 hours of rough stuff. And on the east side, because of the movement south to north at 30 miles an hour, that's going to add to the wind part of the equation east of the track, and it's going to subtract some of it from on the west side. There's a lot of tropical moisture here. That's, by the way, just want to kind of set the difference between this and Faye, because Faye basically developed out of a non-tropical system. So while it became tropical in nature, it didn't have the rich tropical moisture that this one has, and that really solid southeast flow coming in off the Atlantic. So that's going to feed in. That rain's going to come down very, very hard and torrential in those areas that get into that area of rain that's going to be on the west side of the low. The radar, you can actually see what looks like maybe the eye, the center or the eye start closing off here off the South Carolina coast. There's not much going on south and west of Charleston. That's all done. We see heavy rain up the coast to Myrtle Beach and some bands into North Carolina, but that circle there, that's the core. And there's Joe, there's some fairly solid rain that's moved up into northern Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and into southern and south central Pennsylvania, coming down pretty hard. I think tonight some areas are going to see showery rains. Other areas probably won't see very much at all. I think the best chances for those showery rains are going to be inland from the coast. But and that's telling you where you see this heavy rain that's here this evening on the radar. That's kind of telling you where the heavy rains for tomorrow were going to be.
Right. That's absolutely true. And you can almost draw a line from where the eye is trying to form all the way up to those bands of orange and red in southeast Pennsylvania, the Quaker County, if you will, the Amish country. And yeah, that's going to be. Now, the interesting thing is when I made comparisons between the GFS parallel, and the 3 and 12 kilometer NAM, the NAM seemed to want to try to push all of the moisture, the heavy moisture, directly out ahead of the storm track, whereas the GFS most definitely had all of the heavy stuff just over to the left or to the west of the storm center. So basically, put it this way: anywhere to the north and west, that's where the heavy duty rains are going to come, and anywhere south and east, that's where the much lighter rains. But even out across Long Island, except for maybe on the Twin Forks, I think even on Long Island, most places will get at least an inch out of this, maybe a couple. And if thunderstorms get involved, and they may very well might, you could have even on Long Island the odd 3+ inch total. And for places to the west of the storm track, if thunderstorm activity gets involved, maybe 5 or 6 inches. So we're talking about a
Right.
half a foot in only about 6 hours time. That is a pretty substantial amount. But no, it is not going to be a repeat of Floyd. It is not going to be a repeat of Irene. Some of these record-setting rains of 10 and 12 inches, nothing like that. Even in the worst case scenario tomorrow, nobody's going to see anything like that. And please, if you know anybody who calls you up and says, I heard on television that it's going to be as bad as Sandy, no, please, it's not going to be like Sandy either.
I drew a line that pretty much represents the forecast track. So that line will delineate probably the western, where you're talking about the rain that will cause flash flooding. Now, is it going to be exactly on that line? No. It could be a number of miles east of that. I get that. Okay, but
right? Tropical systems, they don't go straight as a bird. Although, let me tell you something. The way this thing is going to be firing north at 30 and 40 miles an hour, it could very well be like that. But a lot of times you get these tropical systems that deviate slightly to the left or to the right. They wobble a bit. So, it's not exact. It's not a precise science. But yeah, what you have on the screen right now, Joe, pretty well is what is going to happen. And I'll
right.
tell you, it was never the path of the storm never was really in doubt. Even days ago, the only thing that was really in doubt was the speed, how fast and how quickly this thing was going to come up the coast. But in terms of the path, we've been saying since 4 or 5 days ago, where can the storm go? It can't go out to sea. It's got that big blocking subtropical high. It can't go to the left or to the west because it's got that trough of low pressure. So it had to come right up along the East Coast the way you just delineated on the map there.
Right. I have the Wilmington radar, and you can see the center is now visible on the Wilmington radar. Those yellow boxes are special marine warnings, and I'm trying to see. Actually, some of that's on land, so there might be severe thunderstorm warning in the mix in there too. And of course, that rain moving northward. The radar is not. The bottom part of the radar is probably just coming into range, so we're not seeing it the way I just showed you on the wider view, where you could what looked like a closed off eye. But if we check on this a little later, or if you look at this an hour or so from now, you'll probably see that it is indeed closed off as those other echoes come into the range as the storm gets closer to the center of this, which is the Wilmington radar, which is north and east of where that what looks like the center of this actually is. And I'll just jump off one other radar. Let's go up to Morehead City, North Carolina. Newport, Morehead City, North Carolina. And you can see the banding nature, some heavier rains up near the Virginia state line. And then some of these heavier rains that are starting to move in toward Wilmington. Not much going on around Jacksonville. Not a whole lot happening out on the Outer Banks. Robert Brown, some looks like some stuff's approaching you in Goldsboro, North Carolina. There's some heavier rains up north and west of Raleigh. Now you're also getting some interaction with the mountains in western North Carolina, western Pennsylvania, western Virginia. So the rain is getting enhanced even more as that southeast and east wind brings up the moisture. So with that said, I've got the Hurricane Center's forecast. And I'll take it off so you can see it a bit clearer, but the red area basically is the probability of gales. So that dark red is, I believe, close to 100%. The purple's 100%. So you're seeing where the gales are, and I'll take the wind off now, so you can. The track is that black line. Uh, we have a hurricane warning up for a portion of the South Carolina coast near the North Carolina state line, and also on the North Carolina side to just north of Wilmington. Again, it's a technicality. If it becomes a minimal hurricane, it's not going to change too much what the outcome is over there in terms of wind and rain. And you can see the track is north-northeast through eastern North Carolina over Chesapeake Bay. It passes very close to Dover, very close to, on this forecast now, close to Trenton. And at this point, we're starting to see it maybe start to bend a little bit more northeast rather than north-northeast, maybe about 10 degrees, 15 degrees. And it passes just west-northwest of New York City, and then up the Hudson Valley to western Massachusetts. And then as we move into Tuesday night and later Tuesday night and Wednesday, it moves up through New Hampshire, and on it goes. Joe, one of the things I saw today that you don't get to see very often, I'm trying to remember when the last time it happened. I don't know if Hurricane Donna was the last time. We had tropical storm warnings at one point this morning from Florida all the way up to northern Massachusetts. And once the warnings came down in North Florida, you had them for parts of coastal Georgia with tropical storm watches all the way up to Maine. That's something you don't often see, and I don't recall that happening. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't recall that happening anytime in the last 20 or 30 years where the whole coastline up and down was under some sort of tropical storm or a hurricane warning.
Right. The northern extent now is up to Stonington, Maine. And I think that's an artifact, Joe, of what we've been talking about with the speed of the storm. The fact that it would almost like, I'm just stretching the point here, but almost like in a blink of an eye, the storm is, down in the Carolinas, whereas at this time tomorrow night, it's already moving through the mid Hudson Valley and on up towards central New England. That's a fast mover. And if you're going to warn people, you got to at least, put a watch out. And if that be the case, you put the watch out all the way up into where else? Up to coastal Maine. It's amazing. It's an amazing situation.
WPC's rainfall forecast here. And again, this goes to what we said with respect to the track. If you notice, southeastern New England, the eastern part of Long Island is in the white zone, which is under an inch of rain, under an inch. Okay. The light green, western Long Island, New York City, and down to just inland of the coastal counties in New Jersey, so say just west of the Garden State Parkway, running right down along the coast is where you have that 1 to 2 inch band, and then 1 to 2 inches covers most of Connecticut. But then northwest Connecticut, north and west of the Turnpike in New Jersey, you get and up the Hudson Valley, you get the 2 to 4 inches, and then they have this. The yellow is 4 to 6. Northwest Jersey, in the Catskills, southeastern Pennsylvania, a small portion of southwest Jersey, down into northern Delaware, much of eastern Maryland. In that band, there's even a 6 to 10 inch band that they're indicating around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. And then that continues down into Virginia, North Carolina, and into coastal South Carolina. And of course, that includes some of the rain that's already fallen. So these would be storm totals. Again, emphasizing the fact if you're north and west of that storm track, you got rain is going to be your big issue. The wind gusts might be there, but the rain is going to be your big issue. And east of that, rain is less of an issue, and wind is your bigger issue.
Correct. So it's a lesser. I mean, which of the two evils do you want to deal with? Assuming that you know that you have to deal with one, would you deal with the heavy potential flooding conditions, the flooding rains, or the potential of the winds, which could knock a couple of trees down or knock a few power lines down and put you in the darkness for a little bit? I mean, it's a tough call. But I do want to answer one question on the chat board from Martha Sanwall. It's a name I have not seen.
Welcome, Martha.
And she was talking about the full moon and how this may affect the coastal conditions and the tide. And in terms of the tri-state area, I think there's only going to be one high tide cycle that will jump out or stand out. As it turns out, if you are along the ocean shorelines of New Jersey, or let's say New York Harbor, or the south coast or south shore of Long Island, The time to watch will be the tides at the high tide at 8:30 to about 10 o'clock in the morning, and that really does not fall in the time frame when the storm is going to be at its worst. So that's a little bit of a saving grace. I think when the next high tide cycle comes at, let's say, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the evening, the storm will be long gone, and the winds will have calmed down a bit. So
As long as the low center is north of us and the winds have turned around to the west,
right,
yes, that then we might escape the tidal issue if that is the case.
right now,
If the storm for some reason is a little slower in moving up the coast, where we're still seeing southerly winds at 7 or 8 o'clock tomorrow night, that's going to be a problem for south shore, south facing shorelines.
right, and the other area, of course, is those who have a shoreline with Long Island Sound, either the North Shore of Long Island or the Sound Shore of Westchester or the Sound Shore of Connecticut. In that case, unfortunately, the tides are going to reach their high point just about at the time when the storm has revved up and is reaching its peak or has begun to reach its peak. Any area, any coastal area with Long Island Sound, you'll be dealing with high tide anytime from 11:45 to just after 1 in the afternoon. As we've been pointing out, it's going to be a 6-hour storm, and looks like the beginning of that 6-hour period will be landing just about in that time frame. So it may be more problematic if you live, let's say, especially along the south shore of Connecticut, the sound shore of Westchester. I'm not sure about the north shore of Long Island, since the winds will be coming up from the south and southeast and kind of blowing out the water, but still, that'll be the tide cycle for those of you who are near to the shore areas of the Long Island Sound.
Joe Rayo is monitoring the chat board tonight, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them on there, and we'll try to address them. And you need your Gmail account to subscribe to the by YouTube channel, and then you can jump on the chat board and take part in the conversation that goes on during the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Here's WPC's. There's a wide view of the rainfall, Joe. It's like this stripe, and we've been following those stripes on the models. WPC with that narrow stripe of 4, 5, 6 inch plus rainfalls running from the small corner there near Myrtle, near the South Carolina North Carolina state line, and then in the eastern part of both states, and then running up the coast through Virginia, through Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, southeastern PA. Then it kind of tails off a little bit, but you're still seeing significant rains on up the Hudson Valley. No doubt there's no drought to worry about after this is all done. That's also notice the rainfall, the lighter blues, Long Island, coastal New Jersey, southeastern New England. Those are rainfall amounts of 1.5 inches or less. So I don't think, unless it gets convective, which is possible, there should not be any serious flash flood issues with regards to this. But that's going to be something we'll figure out tomorrow when we're looking at radars. There's also going to be severe weather risks that we mentioned, and we're going to talk about that as well. So one of the things, Joe, that has struck me, the European in particular and the icon, and they match up pretty well. Is they hold on to the intensity of the low in the low 990s, and in fact, the European has this as a 988 low. That's pretty deep, and it keeps it as a 988 low even when it goes north of New York City. The European does. And it's the reason why the European, on the model anyway, produced some pretty high wind gusts in coastal areas, even gusts to hurricane force or more being indicated by that model. I will just say that lately, when it comes to those wind gust forecasts off the European model, they have been a little bit high. So just to put that as a caveat, that's why I'm kind of staying with this idea that we'll see gusts of 50 to 60, and maybe the odd gust or two that'll be higher than that. But don't be shocked if you do wind up with somebody winds up with a really odd gust. But what's happening is that upper trough is just kind of juicing this up a bit as it races up to the northeast. Half of the circulation really is still over the ocean. You're still getting good Atlantic inflow. And in terms of the timing, which has really been I think the biggest forecast problem for us all along has been trying to figure out the timing, because the GFS has been so much faster than all the other models. But by tomorrow morning, the icon has it in southeast Virginia. And you see where we see the precip. This is not radar, by the way, that it's showing. It's actually showing just rainfall amounts. from the prior 3 hours. And running through at 11 o'clock, it looks like it's just in Chesapeake Bay. And that the purple and the red, those are pretty solid rainfall amounts that you're looking at here that are running up through northeastern Virginia and into Maryland and southeastern Pennsylvania. By 2 o'clock, it's in Delaware Bay. By 5 o'clock, it's just west of New York City. So between Trenton, this matches up very well with what the Hurricane Center's forecast is, and you can see where the yellow and the red. That's where all the big rains are going to be, north and west of the low center, and the very tight gradient that's to the east of the low. That's who gets the big wind. And by 8 o'clock, the low, Joe, is sitting, I'm thinking maybe right outside your front window. You should look up and make sure you can see the little L go by as that happens. The heavy rains moving up into the middle Hudson Valley and beyond. And then, of course, by 11 o'clock, it's in southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire. At 2 a.m. up in northern New Hampshire. Maine is on the east side of this. Kind of odd, though. Caribou, Maine. I wonder, did they have to put up the tropical storm warning for whatever coastal areas are part of their forecast zone?
Almost unheard of, right? Caribou.
Yeah, I mean that is odd. And then of course it's right into Canada. After that, I'm hoping that we get enough dry air behind it so that we catch a little humidity break on Wednesday, and Wednesday should turn out to be a nice day overall. So
Now,
maybe
did
with a
you
little
know?
luck, we can get the dew points to come down a couple of notches. I can
If you
see
notice on
the
my screen, Joe, I put up the 21Z run of the RPM, the so-called FutureCast model, just to
right,
show you what the latest is, and it looks like the RPM is showing that the lion's share of the heavy rain is to the west of New York, which is of course what we've been saying, but New York just seems to get just a glancing blow in terms of
right.
the
New York City.
rain.
And if you'd also notice on the RPM, there's this east-west arm that goes by Long Island,
Right.
across New York City and Long Island and through Connecticut and southeastern New England. That is what you have to watch out for the possibility that there could be some severe weather when it goes by, and that may include tornadoes. By the way, the risk for tornadoes tomorrow is actually rather relatively high for this
5%.
for this area. 5% is a high number. You don't see 5% too often.
Right. I said on my own show on my Joe Rayo Weather Channel at 5 o'clock. I said, there's a lot of people hear that and they say, oh well, 5%. What's that? You have to understand. You have to put it into a relativistic mode. You're absolutely right, Joe. 5% is about as high as you're going to see for a probability of a tornado outbreak or a chance of a tornado. I have seen every once in a while out in Missouri or Oklahoma or Iowa. Sometimes the storm prediction that will go as high as 10%, but that too is about as high as you're going to see. So
Right.
5% is pretty good. And by the way, yesterday we had a tornado watch, and Sharon, Connecticut, had a reported tornado.
Yes.
These advisories, these watches and potential threats are just to remind you that everything is primed for a possible isolated funnel cloud or a tornado. We're not talking about the whole area getting hit by tornadoes,
No.
spawning a tornado here and there. And that, again, you just pointed out, this could very well happen tomorrow on Long Island or maybe coastal Connecticut, especially.
I'll bring up SPC's map. What that 5% means, by the way, is it means that take any point, wherever you're standing, okay? So go out in a radius of about 25 miles. So there's a 5% chance that there could be a tornado on any given point within 25 miles at any given point. So that actually is not a small number, okay? You're never going to see it much higher than 15 or percent. Maybe on the odd case of some super outbreak, you'd see a number that's stronger than that. But 5% for here is sizable. We actually do have a working tornado watch now in southeastern North Carolina that has been put up, in the marginal risk. Now this goes into tomorrow morning, and we do see these cells that are running northward now through New Jersey, and also in southeastern South central Pennsylvania. The marginal risk into tomorrow morning runs up the coast to just about to Sandy Hook, back to just north of Trenton. And then tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk of severe weather from coastal Virginia to southern New England with marginal risk on either side. And when we put up the tornado risk area, you can see where the 5% zone is. So basically east of the low track, along and east of the low track in that zone from the immediate coast of Virginia over Delaware, the middle and southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, virtually all of New Jersey, all of Long Island, all of Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, Rhode Island, southern Massachusetts in that 5% zone for a tornado. Not trying to scare anybody here, okay? But just want to just let you know that the risk is there, that this is a situation sometimes with these tropical systems with a good southeast tropical flow coming in from off the Atlantic, that you could get a few spin-ups. And oftentimes, Joe, this is a situation where you oftentimes see a lot of waterspout activity out here.
Right, right. So this is all in the bag, so to speak, for tomorrow. And whether or not we pull it out of the bag with the passage of this storm will be most interesting. It'll be an interesting midday and afternoon tomorrow, Joan. And ironically, by this time tomorrow night, we'll be talking about the post-mortem because I think it'll all be behind us, assuming the fast speed of this
Or unless
system.
we go on, unless you and I try to go on earlier while it's raging, and not have to deal with any kind of power outages.
Right. Well, I'm certainly up for that, and I assume that you and I will have power because I don't know about your provider, but mine there tends to be times when it just goes out. I've had it go out on me on bright sunny days. So
Yeah, no, exactly. We have the recon is there right now, and they just updated it. This is from Tropical Tidbits. If you click on Air Force Recon, you can pull up these graphics that Levi Cowan makes, and they're terrific because you can see the wind barbs that are out here in the ocean and the scale on the bottom. Joe, looks like this might be. I'm waiting to see a pressure reading. That to me is the most important thing. But we've got purple wind barbs on the west side, which is impressive. Purple wind bars on the west side of 64 to 83 knots, and also some purple barbs on the east side, which is where wind barbs which you expected from the southeast, running at 64 to 83 knots. So we'll see what kind of pressure it finds, but perhaps the Hurricane Center will get a new advisory. It's at 7:38 Eastern time right now, so we'll get a new advisory coming up shortly to see if they make this a minimal hurricane. And again, it makes no difference really in terms of the weather outcome. As far the extra 5 miles an hour wind, it's just mainly a technical designation and nothing more. So let's go back to I'll go back to the models.
is it important if your home suffers damage in a storm? Is it important when you go to your insurance company as to whether or not the status of the storm at that moment when your damage
It
was
might be, and
was
well, it might be. I guess it depends on if it says. Does it say tropical storm? Does it say hurricane specifically? I guess it depends on how the policy is written, because all the coastal areas now have, if you own a home, you're going to have a hurricane. You're going to have a hurricane thing in there, so that's going to raise your deductible in case the damage is from a hurricane. So you probably would have to have some kind of gap insurance to cover it. I'm not 100% sure how that works. Thankfully, I never had to claim that, so knock on wood. Here's the parallel GFS from earlier today. So on its track, this is it's a little faster than what the icon was. So at 8 a.m., it's just getting ready to move into Chesapeake Bay. That might be just a tad fast, but we'll see. And by 2 p.m., it's in southern New Jersey, somewhere between Atlantic City and Philadelphia. And after that, it's at 8 o'clock, it's long gone into southern Vermont. So if this timing is right, Joe, it's probably mostly over with. In Philadelphia, it'll be over with by say 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and in New York City, it'll probably be over with at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and the
Right.
winds will have shifted around. But
Right.
again, it's that 6-hour time frame that we're looking at, and looking at the upper air. I want to bring up. I'll bring up the full U.S. because I can use that. I like the look of this uh, on the regular GFS. It's not available on the parallel, but it's available on some of this 48-hour 500 millibar forecast trend because I think the colors stand out. And you see, folks, the deep upper trough here that is swing right, one short wave there in the north that's swinging around, the other one that drops down from Indiana down to New Orleans. Here's your tropical system. Oh, there you go. There's your tropical system right there. This was at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And if you follow it along, the trough swings around. That upper low that's north of Lake Superior swings around, and then just follow that spot there. The circle that's off the South Carolina coast runs north-northeast. That deep upper low just picks it up and lifts it up to the northeast. So by Wednesday at 2 a.m., it's that line I just drew. Let me just erase everything else, and I'll just redraw it. This is where, that's the shortwave now that represents the what's left of the tropical storm already lifting on up into Canada. And then, of course, you get this drier air that comes down behind the upper low. Again, I'm hoping that we get some dew point relief. And after that pulls out, just to take a look at the weather as we move on to the latter part of the week, it's like another weak shortwave approaches, Joe, sometime late Friday night. And on the long range, which I haven't looked at the long range out for the last 5 or 6 days, but we kind of go back to this east-west ridge across the southern part of the southern half of the U.S. I'm now into the middle part of next week, and we're almost to the middle of the month. And of course, you see where the flow is. We're kind of right on the edge of the flow coming out of Canada, and rolling it along. Nice little trough there at the end of next week. That's August 14th. And the models have been trying to build a big ridge in the long range, and it's doing it again. So this kind of suggests, if this is correct, that maybe around mid-month, we after about the 15th or 16th, if this holds, that we might get into a bit of a stretch of heat for mid-August.
I like the look at that northwest flow, that upper flow. That gives us some nice drop in the humidity, which we have not had. My goodness.
Yeah, if we could get if you can get a nice enough short wave to come down and bring that jet down, yeah, we can get a nice break in the humidity. Notice out in the west, by the way, a deep upper low that comes into the Pacific Northwest. So there's no heat there in the western part of the United States. If you got a deep trough in the west, you got a big ridge in the east. I want to just take a look at the tropics. Take a look at the wide view of the tropics to see if it does anything. Pressures. The way the ridge is, I mean, pressures aren't going to be all that low in the Gulf of Mexico. Just going to roll it back to see what goes on in the Atlantic, because you got this narrow east-west ridge, the tropical Atlantic. It looks like there might be a couple of tropical waves that'll move along in the flow, but I don't think it really showed anything when I looked at it at this. I think I snuck a look at this yesterday to see if it was showing anything if it was spinning up a Category 5 in the long range, which they love to do. But rolling it along, I'm not really seeing much of anything. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The models don't always catch what's out there. We already seen that a couple of times this season. And Joe, the other thing too is that the Pacific side is dead. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's not even it's 2 carriage returns, 8 line feeds, 4 ends, which is what we used to call the old teletype when they would come out. When you'd finish something, you had to type a code. If you type 2 carriage returns, 8 line feeds, and 4 ends, the machine knew that was the end of the message, and then it would go on to the next one.
Right. Well, Douglas was there. He's gone now, and
it's the only hurricane in the Pacific, and we're in August. This has got to be one of the least active seasons in memory with regards to the Pacific tropics.
Right. So that system that was off of Africa, which they had briefly possibly becoming a tropical system, tropical storm, never did pan out. So now
Well, it
Josephine,
developed into a depression near
right,
the Cabo Verde Islands, and then it just basically fell apart.
right,
Which the upper air winds just weren't there. It was already pretty far north anyway, because it was actually north of the Cape Verde Islands. It was at 20 degrees west, for God's sake. I mean, it was at 20 north and 20 west. It was just too far north and too far east
right.
for
So
anything to get going.
Josephine has another chance now because I said every 6 years we get the name Josephine. It never amounts to much of anything. And I said, well, this one's going to go and come and go so quick. But now Josephine at least has a chance to latch on to a more robust maybe
Right.
system.
There is disturbed weather that the Hurricane Center mentions is still carrying a 60% chance of developing is this cloud mass that you see south and east of Isaias, and it doesn't seem to be doing very much. I can't really pick out any kind of low-level swirl in there, so that doesn't look like it's. The models have been trying to spin up a small circulation with that, but even the ones that did do that kept it very weak and really didn't do anything with it. So maybe we're going to go into a period of a little bit of a break here with regards to tropical activity. But we'll see. As I said, the models don't always catch what's out there very well, particularly with tropical systems. So we've already been surprised a few times. So who knows if we're going to wind up being surprised again. So Johnny Quest saying he got about 2 inches of rain today, and whether he's going to see any more with that upper trough swinging around. Some of that rain, that heavy rain, Johnny, is getting enhanced by the mountains there. So you get that southeast flow. You might see some rain tonight and tomorrow. I just want to let me just quickly take a look at the radar view of the GFS, and let's just roll it back to
While you're
a
doing that,
reasonable
Joe,
time.
while you're doing that, the chairman, Scott Briller, hitting super chats and also asking everyone to say a prayer for his mom, who will be undergoing surgery on Thursday.
Yes, she can get her
Yeah,
knees taken
yes.
care of. Excellent, excellent. She'll once she gets them done, she's gonna and gets through rehab. She's gonna wish she had done it sooner. And unfortunately, given the circumstances with what's been going on, that hasn't really been possible
Right.
with surgeries and elective surgeries and hospitalizations. Johnny, it looks like most of that rain passes east of you. I mean, you get clipped a little bit by it maybe during the early morning hours into tomorrow morning, but it's fast in, fast out. The heavy precip gets really close to you for a short time, so you might get into it for a couple of hours, but it won't be hanging around, and you won't be getting into that real core of rain. I'll just Joe, before we go back to the chat board here, I want to just bring up the model rain forecast maps just to kind of reinforce what we've been saying with regards to where the heavy rain is versus the wind. And I got some wind maps too I want to show just before I forget. But
Okay.
in terms of total accumulated precip, you can see the GFS. That white is 2 inches. Okay. The darkest blue is half an inch. So again, if you're in southeastern New England, if you're on Long Island, unless there's something convective that comes through, the rainfall amounts are not going to be the problem. And you see where the stripe is on the GFS of what it shows is 2 to 5 inch rainfall amounts. It's never going to get the max area in terms of how the model handles these things. The icon model uh, is a bit further east with that western edge, and I think it matches up fairly well with the European. Again, less at the coast, north and west of the Turnpike in New Jersey, southeastern PA, down into eastern Maryland, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, points southward from there, get into that purple stripe of 6 inches plus, 3, 4, 5 inches as you head up north and east of there, northwest New Jersey, the Catskills, just north and west of you, Joe. You get some heavier rains up in the higher terrain there. That'll all get enhanced with the southeast and east wind with the moisture coming in from off the water. And the NAM,
as I pointed out, the NAM seems to want to push
yeah,
the bulk of the storm straight ahead of the path, as opposed to being to the left of the path.
right, and that's why this has probably the westernmost. It's got the 2-inch line right at New York City, although it still does the same thing out to the coast. And then you see that heavy stripe. It's maybe tilted a little more northeast southwest instead of northeast southwest, but they all have the same idea. So if anybody complains tomorrow, if they're in the areas that weren't supposed to get rain, that they didn't get rain, you're going to get a lecture. Okay, you are going to get a lecture. Now, I just want to bring up in terms of the wind situation. So I have here, this is the digital forecast from the Weather Service. So this is at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. If we'll bring it down a little bit, at that point with the low somewhere near Chesapeake Bay, you can see some of the winds that are being generated there. 68, there's a 68 knot wind gust that's being shown up at some dot that's out in the water. But you certainly have gusts every bit of 50 to 60. But you head up further north around Washington, for example, 17, Baltimore 24, Dover 25, Cape May just about getting ready to gust to 30, Atlantic City 20. But everybody else, tomorrow morning, if I hear you tomorrow morning say I woke up and where's the storm, nothing's happened. That's because it's not supposed to be there yet. Okay, but you can see the winds are very, very light everywhere else. This is at 9 a.m. So now we'll just kind of move it along. 10 a.m., you start to see those gusts into the 40s. It's amazing, Joe, when I'm going to loop this hour by hour, how the winds pick up the way they do. And this is, we're now at 11 a.m., and suddenly you're 40 to 50 in southernmost Jersey, but everywhere else it's still pretty reasonable. By noon, we're starting to see some big winds approaching just south of Philadelphia, northern Delaware, that line of 40 plus creeping northward through New Jersey. And at 1 p.m., 195 in New Jersey, and then going west into southeastern Pennsylvania, some gusts of 40 to 50. According to the Weather Service digital forecast, Toms River, a gust there of 43. You can see 50 to 60 and even 60 plus mile an hour wind gusts in southernmost New Jersey down to Delaware and into at Cape May. So that's at 1 p.m. Now, finally, at 2 p.m., that's when the big wind gusts start at New York City and areas just to the south. Long Island is starting to pick up. And here we are now at 3 p.m. A lot of gusts in New Jersey, Central and South Jersey in the 60s. 4 p.m. Gusts in the 50s and 60s now reaching New York City and the South Shore of Long Island. 5 p.m. Kind of a shrinking area of those big winds, but still every bit of gusts of 50 to 60 or higher. There's even a gust of 64 just east of Sandy Hook. And going on to 6 p.m., in the 50s across much of Long Island, a little bit lower on the east end, also southern Connecticut, the Hudson Valley. And then we start to see the improvement from west to east, Joe. By 8 o'clock, the winds are generally gusting under 20 miles an hour from New York City west, but still rather strong from New York City east. And then they just quickly improve. So as fast as the winds pick up, will probably be as quickly as they drop off.
Agreed. Absolutely. And Scott Briller just tipped me off on the chat board, and I just went on the National Hurricane Center site, and Isaias is now a hurricane again. Maximum sustained wind 65 knots, 75 miles per hour, central pressure 988 millibars, and it is moving to the northeast at 16 miles per hour. So we're back to a hurricane, and probably will be a hurricane when it makes landfall in a few hours along the South Carolina coast.
I have the rainfall totals up as well from the digital forecast, and I'll drop it down further south so you can take a look for those of you that are watching from Virginia and North Carolina. You can see the numbers are filling in here with some 4 and 5 inch rain amounts, some amounts close to 6 inches. There'll be some locally higher amounts, but this is not a stalling system, so you really don't have to worry about crazy rainfall like what happened in Florence. And there's your big bullseye over near the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. You start to move up again, eastern Pennsylvania, western counties of New Jersey, up into the Catskills, 3 to 4, 3 to 5, maybe an odd 6-inch amount. New York City, 2.80 total. Jersey Shore amounts are all about an inch to an inch and a quarter. Long Island amounts, central and eastern Long Island, about an inch to an inch and a half. I think these are reasonable forecasts that forecasts you can put out there to cover for any convective stuff that happens. And just be aware that those numbers could come in lower. And then through upstate New York, we're looking at, and of course, this thing's going to start moving faster, so there'll be less time for rain to be put down. But 2 to 3 inches, I think, is fair with some odd 4-inch plus amounts in some locations. And up in Maine, looks like rainfall amounts there are going to be on the order of fractions of an inch near the coast, near the northeastern part of the Maine. And further south and west toward Portland, it's more like a couple of inches there, and an inch and a half, inch and 3/4 as you move inland north and northeast in the great state of Maine.
On the chat board, Margie Florio is asking, could this possibly be a tropical depression when it reaches New Jersey tomorrow? I don't think so, Margie. It
No,
may be a depression, let's say, when it gets past northern Maine, but when it passes through New Jersey, it will still be a full-fledged tropical storm. She also made I'm thinking that she's kidding here. She said, "Well, this is just a scam, edited by the government."
they're creating it. Yes.
Yes. Well,
Yes, because
I will
Joe
say
and I get our checks every week to perpetrate this scam. Yes, indeed.
the only potential scam was one, and I'm not going to bring up any names or anything, but there was one hurricane forecast that was actually corrected or edited with a Sharpie. But that's the only
That's
scam.
neither here nor there.
I didn't say that.
All right. All right. Steve Lapointe hitting super chat tonight as well. Thank you very much. And the double hits from Scott Briller. Thank you very much indeed for hitting super chat. I can't see the chat board, folks, because I have software that I use to bring the maps up on the air, and I'm moving those around. So when I bring the YouTube board up so I can see the chat, I have to wait for all the chats to scroll up from the beginning of the hour. So they're catching up now. I just saw my buddy Junior is on there, Edward, but I can't see what you're saying because the darn thing's going at 100 miles an hour, Junior. All right. So I think that we're in. I don't think there's anything else really to add with regards to this. The storm was what it was. I don't know why people seem to get the impression. I honestly do know how it happens. What winds up happening, Joe, is everybody forecast shops. So they'll watch as many weather people as they have access to, and then they'll just attribute they'll take the most negative forecast outlook and make it sound like everybody was saying it. And it drives me crazy because I'm not part of that. You and I are never been part of that crowd.
Well, what in the media, the news media world, Joe, if it bleeds, it leads, and sure enough, as predicted, we were talking about this on Friday, how at least from my vantage point on Friday, the storm was getting short shrift. I mean, like hardly anybody was talking about it. But I did say, once we get to where we are right now, that now it goes to the top of the page. And don't be surprised tomorrow, if you're hoping to watch, let's say, Let's Make a Deal or The Price is Right or one of your soap operas tomorrow, that's not being preempted by your local station who will have, quote, team coverage. And they'll have all their reporters scattered about at every viewpoint and vantage point to report minute by minute on this particular storm.
Just I'm going to say this kindly, but out of respect to the people that are on the chat board, I really would wish those of you who are on there, some of you I can see are doing some political stuff and non-science stuff. It really doesn't have a place here. So just bear that in mind. Just kind of be nice and play nice in the sandbox, but while the show is on, I'm not big on seeing people get into all sorts of politics. Before or afterwards, what you guys talk about is fine, but let's just kind of this is a place where we can come to get away from all of that stuff, okay? And I want to keep it that way. So let's just leave it at that. And this is Smadamat. This is a no hype whatsoever channel. There never has been hype on this channel, and there never will. Okay, so on that note, Nick Cortez just hit super chat. Thank you, Nicholas. Everything is going well. I hope everything is going well by you. And why don't you start, Lay Jeopardy, Dave Brelar, and then I'll find your questions.
All right, quickly. Nick Cortez asks, how many mile-per-hour wind gusts in Suffolk County, central Suffolk to eastern Suffolk, let's say Ronkonkoma to Mauritius? And to that, I'll simply say, again, the broad brush statement, 40 to 60, maybe even higher than 60 miles an hour. Take into account the strength of the storm, the forward speed of the storm. Yeah, that area that we're talking about out on Long Island seems to have the best chance of getting rather significant winds tomorrow during that 6-hour time frame tomorrow afternoon from Isaias. As far as the question is concerned, Joe, or questions, Brilla Jeopardy for Monday. Question: what is Mount Washington's highest daily snowfall for August?
For August?
August.
Oh God, I'll take a wild stab at it. I'll just pull a number out of my hat, out of my top of my head. I'll say 6
Hey,
inches.
Bucky, let's pull a snowfall total out of my hat.
Yeah, I'll say 6 inches.
6 inches? Wrong. 2.5, and that apparently happened in August of 1965.
Okay, well, I figured it was a low number, but I didn't want to go too low, so I went 6. All right, so go ahead.
300 feet above sea level there. Question 2: what was the longest movie title to win Best Picture? And here's the hint: it was in the 2000s.
I'm sorry, say that again.
What was the longest movie title to win, I guess, the Oscar for Best Picture? And the hint is that it happened in the 2000s. So you don't have to think back
the longest
1950 or
the longest title.
The longest movie title
by number of letters. Well, I mean, there was Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, but I'm thinking that's wrong. I don't. You know what? I don't know.
You got it. No, Lord of the Rings: Return.
Oh, really? That it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I figured that was the one that has Lord of the Rings: Return. It's 8 words, so that should make enough letters. Okay, so that's good. What else?
And the last question: who was the only president, the only one out of 45, not to be married?
Oh, Mr. Buchanan.
Mr. Buchanan.
James Buchanan. He lived with the senator from Alabama and often referred to him as his wife.
Okay.
No, he did. I'm serious. In letters that they have,
right.
They used to. Of course, they wrote in different styles in those days, in terms of how people wrote to each other. But he would jokingly. That was the running joke in Washington, that they were always seen together and that they were bachelors.
Okay.
Okay. So my question to you is, I had it. Now I gotta roll back again. All right. So here we go. How many named storms have recorded at least? Well, this is a somber question. How many named storms have recorded at least one death in New Jersey since 1955?
How many named storms have
produced at least one fatality?
One fatality.
Yeah.
How many named storms? Since 1955?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means there's 62, and they're not always a storm in any given year. A fatality. I'll say 20.
Oh wow, that is really a good get. 19.
19.
Yeah, good. I mean, by Price is Right rules, you lost, but that was really good. 19. Okay, now this question, if you answer it, really, really, it would impress me. Okay.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you and I both watch old television shows, and we know, for amongst our favorite shows, you'll know like every detail. And this detail is a real detail. So when Norton and Ralph agreed to watch a TV show with two fighters, who were the fighters?
Oh, Kingfish Levinsky and Joe. I'm going to remember this now. 2 o'clock. Well, you're going to tell me the answer or whatever. But if you gave me enough time, I probably would be able to get the other fighter. I think that one of them is Kingfish Levinsky or
Right, Kingfish Levinsky,
and
Maxie Rosenblum.
Maxie Rosenblum.
Okay, and who was the host of the game show, The $99,000 Answer?
Herb. Herb. Now, what was his last name? It was Herb something or other. I don't know.
Norris. 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 Herb Norris.
Herb Norris, who actually I met. He's probably gone to the great beyond now, but he did.
You actually was his name really Herb Norris?
No, I don't think it was. That was.
You mean that actor? You met that actor that played Herb Norris?
Right. I think.
Wow.
But he made an appearance at that CW Post Honeymooners convention like in 1980, and like you should have seen the line of people lined up just to shake his hand, and virtually everybody said the same thing. Herb.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
That was from the Royal Association of the Longevity and Preservation of the Honeymooners, Ralph.
Too funny. All right, so I guess we're done. So tomorrow
we had what, 300?
Yeah, this is our big. Steve LaPointe pointing out that this is the biggest audience we've had since last summer, of over 300 in one slot. So I'm happy.
I see my friend Gary Citro, who's an assiduous amateur astronomer, is on, a member of the Amateur Observer Society of New York, and he verifies it's Maxie Rosenblum. Well, I don't know.
Maxie
Rosenblum.
Right, and he also said every actor played 9 people, which is true. I forgot the name of the actor that was a semi-regular. He would come in with messages and play little bit parts on the Honeymooners. But then he was also on Seinfeld, on a few episodes of Seinfeld. I forgot his name.
Well, the guy who played Uncle Leo was also Judge Hurdle on the Honeymooners. You know, this is the man who gets the award. This was after.
Oh, is that hit? No kidding. Yeah, the other guy. There's the other guy. I'm trying to think of an episode that he was in, and he was in a number of them. Like he would show up at the door and give Ralph a message from the bus company, and I forgot the name of the actor, but I think he had done some Seinfeld episodes for a while until he
managed to
away.
Stay around well into this 80s and 90s. I know who you're talking about.
His face is right in front of me.
I think he played Joe Rumsey.
Yes, yeah.
At the bus company or whatever.
Yes. All right. So tomorrow, well, we got. I don't know what your schedule is during the day tomorrow. We can try to come on live during the afternoon when everything is going. We could do that.
Yeah, we could play it by ear, see what's going on.
All right, so we'll do that. We'll play it by ear, folks. So you know the drill. If you're on Patreon, if you're on my Facebook page, or if you're on the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, you'll get a notification if we're going live. So just look for those. And if we are going live, I'll try to set up and open the chat board up as early as I can. Izzy D is a late super chat hit tonight. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you very much. And Reaver, I'm sorry, I did not get a chance to look at what's going on in Europe. It's just been really too busy. So maybe if not, I don't know if we'll have time tomorrow, but maybe on Wednesday we'll take a look at what's happening there. So everybody stay safe. You know what to expect, and we'll see how it plays out. And again, 4 to 6 hours of rough stuff, and then we're done. All right.
That's right.
Okay. So Joe, have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll be here and as a Rural Reservoir.